So good nutrition, love of movement and activity, and managing screen time. You can be nailing those as a parent. Pretty much everything else kind of falls into line. And if it's an issue for us mature with our brains that are fully formed and mature, imagine what an issue it is for the growing brain. But you gotta let kids be kids and you gotta find a happy balance.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today.
Joe Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and the Hard Way podcast. I've got Amelia Phillips. She's an exercise scientist and a nutritionist, a mom of 4, an absolute expert on how we should be living our best lives, how we should raise our children, and just be overall badass. Welcome aboard.
Hey, thank you for having me, Joe.
And she's in Australia, by the way. So if you're wondering where the accent is from, she just got done wrestling some gators and killing some spiders, some snakes over there. Everything in Australia wants to kill you.
There, I saw a redback in my swimming pool this morning, actually. Big, giant redback that can breathe underwater, which is fantastic when my kids go swimming.
So tell us, this weekend, I had 200 kids. I had set up a course for like a Christmas challenge for a bunch of kids. On the one hand, they were being fed lollipops and garbage and sugar, and then they were allowed to come out and see me and run this course. And these were very high-performing parents in their professional life. And I thought, are we doomed? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why can't we I was joking with the kids when I was handing them their Spartan medals and saying, you can go trade this in for a salad. And all the kids were like, we don't want salad.
It does feel sometimes like you're fighting an uphill battle because just everywhere you look is junk food. But you got to let kids be kids and you got to find a happy balance. And for most of your listeners who are health focused and fitness oriented, you're doing your kids a disservice if you're denying them of all of that, because it actually, and the research shows this, it can actually lead to more disordered eating patterns further down the line. So unfortunately, you got to kind of swim in the waters that you've been put in. But having said that, because of course I'm a nutritionist and, very focused on my kids' nutrition, if you get nutrition right at home, at the kitchen table, in 80% of the food that they eat, then the treats that they get every now and again, don't even worry about it. They go to the party, they stuff their faces with the fairy bread and the cake. But as long as those main staple meals at home are cooked from scratch and you're not doing takeout all the time, you're absolutely fine. Don't sweat it.
You know what my sister-in-law was doing with her kids was she was putting turmeric and really non-tasty spices on like sugary donuts and things, so the kids would be confused and think that maybe they don't taste that good. Good idea, bad idea?
Yeah, look, I love that if you've got the time and the inclination to do it. But I have to say that if you watch kids at a party and there's a big table and it's got the treats on it, but it's also got big slices of watermelon and rock melon and chopped up berries and bananas, interestingly, the fruit gets eaten. And the veggies do get eaten. And it's, yes, they'll pick up a cupcake here and there as well, but you've just got to offer it all. So I see too often people going too far either side. So just find yourself that happy balance. If you've got young toddlers and you can hold off feeding them cake until they're 3 or 4 years old, 100% do it. But once they're off and at school and, once they're out in that world, you just have to find that happy balance. They're not going to a party every day. And look, if they're coming to your Spartan races, Joe, I'd say that they've probably got a nice, healthy, balanced lifestyle anyway. So good on you for running those. They sound awesome.
Every year we put on Death Camp. It's a camp for kids. It's 2 weeks long. It's the terrible name, but for some reason the kids like it. It takes place on our farm, and we absolutely torture kids for 2 weeks.
What age group?
We'll take them from, call it 7, 8 years old to 16. And one year we did our own experiment where the kids were given, we take their phones away when they start, and it's very healthy food for those 2 weeks, like overly healthy. exhaustingly healthy. And we decided the kids were doing a great job. We were going to offer them ice cream and their phones to call their parents. 2 treats. They went over to the phones and used the phones, and all the ice cream melted.
That is such an interesting experiment that the phone actually trumped the ice cream. And I don't know what if you'd have asked me that as a guess, I don't know if I would have said that. It just goes to show the power of the addictive nature of phones. And I'm with you. There's a whole big, in fact, Australia's just been a world leader. We just last week passed legislation to ban social media for under 16-year-olds, and it's a world first, which I'm really excited about because my kids are aged between 6 and 11. So we're not quite at phone stage yet, although lots of their friends have phones. And I'm going to be absolutely so restrictive, and they'll be getting a touch phone before they get a smartphone. To me, I see that as a little bit like smoking of our parents' generation. I do see phone usage and screen time having a massive health impact on our kids, and that's something I focus on in some ways even more than the junk food.
We make a kettlebell phone carrying case. It's like 30 pounds, and you stick the phone in the kettlebell. So if you have to give the kids a phone, they'll get exhausted really trying to use it.
Oh, I absolutely love that. That's such a great idea. Oh, I love that. Was that your idea?
That was my idea. I'm so annoyed with myself with the phone, and I've been traveling a lot lately. And I just told my team today, whether I'm in the Middle East, whether I'm on a plane, whether I'm in a restaurant, wherever I am, every single human being is staring at their phone. They're supposed to be working outside and sweeping. They're staring, like everybody is just head down on the phone.
Yeah, well, if you're listening to this podcast and you're a parent, or maybe you're thinking of starting a family soon, and you think, well, what are the most important things that I need to be focusing on to raise healthy, happy, balanced children, and where are the fights worth it, and where should I focus on? So good nutrition, starting from the moment they're born and onto solids, and we can talk about that. Love of movement and activity, and particularly in those tween years where you see a real polarization. You see the sporty kids just take off and keep going, and you see the on the fence kids really take a back seat. And managing screen time. I mean, they are the 3 cornerstone habits that if you can be nailing those as a parent, pretty much everything else kind of falls into line. And they're a constant battle no matter what age your kids are.
Let's dive into nutrition. We talked a little bit about it. My oldest is 19. We have 4 children as well. We had to move heaven and earth around those 3 very important KPIs you just pointed out. So what are the
Yeah.
tips there? Like let's walk
Yeah.
through them.
Okay, well, I'm just going to do age brackets, 0 to 5, 5 to 10, and then kind of teenage years, right? So 0 to 5, variety is the key. You have to keep offering your child or a huge variety of whole foods, because what's going to happen is they're going to have food aversion. And what a lot of people do is, because little Johnny picked up the avocado and threw it on the floor, oh, Johnny doesn't like avocado. It takes 16 tries of something. So a big tip that I love to give parents is the food must stay on the plate. It doesn't need to be eaten, but you put a plate of food with the chicken and the rice and the carrots and the broccoli, and the kid will be like, oh, I don't like that broccoli. And so they'll want to move it off the plate. You have that fight. It must stay on the plate. If they eat it, they eat it. If they don't eat it, whatever. But what you will find is over time, they will just start to eat it. And yes, you will waste hundreds of dollars in uneaten food, but it is worth it. Okay, your 5 to 10-year-olds, it's really important to have that family ritual of sitting at the table as a family and eating together, and shared platters in the middle is a really great opportunity where they get to see all the food and even the food that they wouldn't normally eat, and it's very shared. So no screens at the table, no eating with the iPad up or anything like that. And that basically carries on. But in the teenage years, they have a lot more freedom and choices. So that's where what you have in the pantry becomes really, really important. And basically, if you don't want them to eat it, don't have it in the house at all. So they would, in a really, quick, loose nutshell, they would be a couple of key tips I have. But also know that in the teenage years, they are going to stray and they are going to eat crap. But as long as those foundations are there, they do end up coming back around again. And also, if you have got super active kids, they need a lot of nutrition. So if they're packing it in with the carbs and things like that, don't worry. If they're doing more than 9 hours a week of exercise, then they're an athlete and they need to be treated, and they do need the carbohydrates. They do need the glucose. They might need the jelly snakes after a hard session. So they would be my quick nutrition tips for parents.
I feel bad for folks listening because I see it from the outside as you do, how difficult it is for parents to put their foot down and try to leave the broccoli on the table or even get it in the plate to begin with. I will tell you a fun story. I took my kids out hiking on a really grueling trip years ago, and we got to a point where they were so hungry, they would eat dirt, literally dirt. It didn't matter what we had. And so what I've said to our family and I've said to friends is they're obviously not hungry enough, but
Yeah.
this idea of like being their butler and changing foods and moving stuff around is ridiculous. When somebody's hungry, they eat anything.
Yeah, and you have touched on two incredible points. And so let me elaborate and give some practical ways to do that. So the first point you've touched on is come to the main meals hungry. And your child, especially in those under 10 years, they should not be eating for an hour and a half before dinner. And if you work backwards, that can be quite hard. If they're getting home from school because they've had to travel for a while and you're wanting to eat dinner at 6, well, you think about it, they've got to stop eating by 4:30. If you've got a snacker or a grazer and kids that graze, that's a very hard thing to do. So that's the first point. And you raise a fantastic point because hungry kids will eat the damn broccoli. And, the second point that you raise, which I find really interesting as well, is just this concept around the type of food that that people will eat. And when they are hungry, they will go for those more bitter tasting foods. You'll find that the fruit actually tastes more sweet when you are hungry. So that's a really, really good point. And the other point that you make is don't feed your kids something different to what you would feed yourself. So you might change, like, for example, when they're babies, you might have the steak and the veggies for you, but you just might be pureeing that up. You don't need to make something different for your child. They should be eating what you're eating, but obviously adjusted age appropriate. And you got to have the fight young, because if you can't keep the food on the plate when they're 3 years old, what are they going to be like when they're, as tall as you and twice your weight, and you won't be able to control them then? You need to be able to have that parental discipline from a very young age.
It's annoying that restaurants have the mac and cheese and the fries and the chicken fingers for the kids, right?
I know, like, I will always just, even if they do want that, I'll order a plate of steamed veggies. You get all that stuff, but you ask there's usually a side of steamed veggies. You bring the steamed veggies out. And you need to, if you want to eat your chips and the burger, here's your pile. I always say, I'm going to make you a pile. Eat the pile, which is the veggies. Eat that, and then, go for your life.
All right, fitness. Fitness for me, 19 years, forcing these kids every morning to literally every single morning, 7 days a week to work out. No matter where we are, we're getting on a plane, we're flying to Australia. We are doing 300 burpees in the airport before that plane boards. Oh my God, it was a battle for 19 years. Now I'm seeing the fruits of that labor. The kids are great athletes, and especially compared to the competition, because like you said, so many parents just give
Yeah.
up and they're not going to push it. But we held firm, and it was worth it.
Look, and your postcode that you live in has one of the biggest impacts on your mortality rate and your longevity, just because those incidental and lifestyle habits that your postcode instills, just by virtue of do you walk to school? Do you catch a bus? What's the weather like? I live on the northern beaches of Sydney, so my kids walk to school every day. All the kids are out and about, and I get that not everybody lives in a climate like that. And so you sometimes have to do like, creative way of going, well, we're going to do our 300 burpees. So it is a fight worth having. And I guess the first one is trying to you don't need to teach your kids to fall in love with movement. They love movement. Young children under 10. But what I'm seeing, and I don't know if you've noticed this, that real probably 8 to about 13, you see this massive polarization. I'm seeing it in all my kids' sports where the sporty kids, off they go. They're off and running. They've got the competitive gene. They're winning trophies and they're loving it. But then the less sporty kids, they're getting left on the sideline because they're not they're not contributing. They're getting less court time. They're not loving it and they're dropping away. And so for me, what I really like to focus on is saving those guys, or what I call the missing middle, and helping parents find something that their kids will love. Just like getting a young kid to join a gym, and as much as it's great to do your 300 burpees, if they can fall in love with it, and sport is often a great litmus test for that. So I would caution parents that 8 to 12 is, particularly with girls as well as puberty kicks in, a really important time to focus on fitness and find something that they love.
And by the way, if you're listening to this, if they're pushing back on that, so at least what I found is we've got to push through the same way we've got to push through with the vegetables on the plate. We've got to push through because it was non-negotiable that you're going to have a sport. No matter what
Yeah.
that sport is, you're picking a sport and we're sticking to it. Or what are we going to do with the devices? We talked a little bit about the devices, but that is the elephant in the room.
Well, like I said, I'm feeling like this is going to be the smoking epidemic when we look back at, the advertising and doctors promoting cigarettes, and just think, were they taking crazy pills? I think our kids are probably going to look back on anyone that was a teenager from 2014, because that's when smartphone usage went up, to now, are going to look at us as parents and say, you failed us as parents. Because honestly, we are failing our children in screen usage, and it's not our fault. It's the environment that we live in, but we as parents now have to make a stance, because it can't keep going on like this. You track mental health and phone usage since 2014. You look at the data, and there's many, many data sets out there, and they track like train tracks. As psychological distress rises, so does screen usage. For me, I'm in the thick of it at the moment. I have these rules around. So, for example, Monday to Friday, my kids don't have any screens. If all the homework is done, there is like in Australia, there's a pro social show called Bluey, and we have like a kids news program called BTN, Behind the News. If everything is done, they might get to watch 15 minutes of that on TV, but no YouTube, no screens, etc. And then in school holidays, a tip I found has worked really well is we will allow that 2-hour time frame between 4 and 6 p.m. because I know dinner's at 6. So, come 4 o'clock, if they've done all their activities. And so really it is just about limiting it to that 2-hour daily limit, ideally less, but how can you as a parent police that? And do not give your kid a smartphone. Just don't.
I agree 1,000% with what you said. We screwed that up. The kids should just have flip phones for sure.
Or an Apple Watch. I got my kids all an Apple Watch because all they can really do is make phone call if, they're doing their letterbox drops as their jobs. But the problem is for the parents, there'll be parents listening going, oh my gosh, that's impossible. And I get it, because once they've got the phone, it's very, very hard to take it away, but you can put limits on it. If you're paying the bills, the attitude of, it's not your phone, it's my phone. I'm lending this phone to you. I'm paying the bills. But if you are not respecting the rules around it, well, that privilege gets taken away.
Fourth question, how do we model the behavior we're looking for here?
Great question. Very, very hard to do. I mean, for me, my phone is an issue. So I am not perfect. I absolutely the phone is away when we sit down and eat. And when we have those connection points, those really with children, it's the connection point that's important. So the moment they walk in the door from school or when they wake up in the morning, if you're just glancing up from your phone, that can be the worst thing you can be doing. But all the phones have an app limit. So Instagram, for example, which is probably my biggest problem, I just find it like a pacifier. So I've set a 15-minute daily limit. And yes, you can override it, but at least now I, find myself mindlessly picking it up and it's blocked. And then I can make a logical, conscious choice. Am I going to override this or not? It goes back in the drawer. Why did I even pick it up? But it's an issue, Joe. And if it's an issue for us mature with our brains that are fully formed and mature, imagine what an issue it is for the growing brain.
When I saw the result of that impromptu experiment on the farm that I described to you, where they chose the phones over the ice cream, I thought, this is a disaster, but it's also a blessing. It's so addictive that we could use it to change society if we could get Google and Meta to install something that, every so many minutes for you to unlock a few more minutes, you got to do 3 burpees, or you got to answer a math question or speak in Mandarin. You could change society.
I love that totally because the attraction and the dopamine pull is so strong that the kid would do 10 push-ups or burpees because it's like a drug. It's that whatever I need to do to get my high, I'll steal, I'll I'll sweat, I'll burn, baby. Oh, you got to get Mark Zuckerberg on the phone. I think you're onto something here, Joe.
I've been saying it for years as often as I can to everybody, hoping that somebody look. There's a reason why, if you're listening, there's a reason why the most valuable companies in the world are the most valuable companies in the world, because they're selling us something that's incredibly addictive, whether that's screen time, whether that's sugary foods, pills, and
Yeah.
pharmaceuticals. I mean, look at the most valuable companies in the world have
Yeah.
stuff that we can't seem to stop consuming. If you and I had the best intentions, but we had to make our quarterly numbers, you start making compromises, and that's what human beings do. There's a great documentary show on the drug business, on OxyContin, and when it got released in the United States. And you watch this founder, Sackler.
Oh, I saw this. I saw there were 2. There was a documentary, but then there was also, the actual series with,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, Matthew Broderick.
Broderick. Yeah, that's right. That was scary.
It was scary, and everybody should watch it, because what it told me and what it showed me, and it showed you, was that we are extremely flawed creatures if we are okay going to bed at night knowing we're poisoning other citizens. And by the way, he's not the only one. Who was selling all those cigarettes? Who Go down a list.
Oh, yeah.
So just know, as a consumer, you are responsible for your family. You're responsible for yourself. Just because it's getting sold doesn't mean it's good. Spend 5 minutes, level up.
But look, it's not all doom and gloom in the sense that we are a lot more conscious and aware of things that are harming our children, unlike previous generations when, lead paint or, plastics. We're aware of this stuff now. And so this is why I love this concept of working out the crux. Like, what is the crux of your family challenge? What is that? 1 or 2 things that if I really focused on those things, it's going to have the biggest impact on my child's health. And, we touched on those 3 around nutrition, around movement, and then around screens as well. So then you might drill down and you're not going to fix them all overnight. If you're sitting here listening going, oh my goodness, I'm doing none of those things particularly well, just pick one area. And it might even be Monday to Friday screens. You might go, you know what? Weekend's too hard. I'm just going to let him go for it. But what can I do on a Monday to Friday to help curb my child's screen addiction? And it might be as simple as we're going to start with meal times. Hey, new family rule, no screens at the dinner table. Or we're going to start with a daily limit. Just focus on that one habit, nail that with your child, and then habit stack, and then build from there. And just remember, you are the parent, and you need to be able to discipline your child. So if you're sitting here thinking, well, that's just not going to happen, there's going to be meltdowns or whatever, you pull your partner aside, you say, we've got a discipline issue, and we're going to use this as an example to get on top. And it's going to be a hellish 2 months, or it won't even be, it'll be a hellish, you think is going to last 2 weeks. They'll, bitch and moan and complain for a couple of days, and then they'll be over it. But you just got to rally together as a couple and make it stick, because they are the fights worth having.
I agree. How do people find you?
Instagram, so Amelia Phillips, I think it's _Amelia_Phillips. My Vitality 360 platform, which is where I've partnered with an integrative GP, and we run all these programs using functional health testing around longevity, around really understanding what goes on inside your body. So using blood biomarkers, stress tests, bioage, etc. So we do a lot around longevity and family health as well. But yes, find me on Insta. I'm really good at DMing. I pretty much try to get back to everybody. And my podcast is called Healthy Her.
Healthy Her. Well, thanks for coming, and thanks for joining all the way from Australia. If any of your audience wants to do any of our events, we've got a bunch of events in Australia that it's on us. Just round up a bunch of names and emails, and we'll get you some entries.
Oh, amazing. I absolutely love Spartan, and I think what you've done is so incredible, Joe. So keep at it, and we've got to focus on this beautiful future generation coming through the ranks now.